Grocery store is not to give you bags, but I can murder any baby I want to. How is that for a country? Same-sex marriage is commonplace today. He's destroyed the very foundation of our country. The respect and dignity of life. Let's abort that baby right now. Let's cut it out and throw it in the trash can. It's all right if it's 9 months pregnant, just as long as we suck the brain out before it leaves the canal, it's still an abortion. 2 years ago, some states passed that you can kill a baby the day that it's born, and it's still called abortion. And the devil comes along and tells you, what are you going to do for God? I've got everybody. Politicians listen to me. And you know what? He's right. Do you know what? Peninnah was right. She had the legacy. Hannah did not. The devil's going to give you some good arguments, and you know what? Some of them he's going to be right on. They don't listen to you. They don't listen to you Christian people. They'd rather go to San Francisco and Los Angeles and New York City and get their theology from the heathen. But is that going to stop you from praying? If it does, he wins. What scares the devil is people wanting to get serious with God and get down on their face and crying out to God, God, we need something. See, the devil wanted her to admit defeat here. If Peninnah could have got her to admit defeat here, where would Israel have been? In a mess, buddy. But you know what? The more she attacked her, the harder Hannah prayed. The more the devil comes by and whispers to you, the harder you need to pray. Your children's out there lost in sin. You'll never get them back. That ought to be the hardest you've ever prayed in your life. Why? Because if he's talking, he's scared. Have you ever noticed, and people are like, don't take this wrong. I know this is carnal, but in our world, if somebody doesn't talk, that's one you better be scared of. They have the confidence. It don't matter what the subject is. If they're sitting in the corner and they're not having to argue anything, you can bet your bottom dollar they're pretty much in control. It's sad to see the devil doesn't even talk to most parents when their children go astray. Why? The devil's got him where he wants him. He don't have to come by and talk to you. Peninnah kept talking to Hannah. The more she talked to Hannah, the more aggressive she became. Boy, the more brokenhearted she became. The more intense she became. Buddy, she got a hold of God. She's either going to get a hold of God or she's going to die trying. This reminds me that there's a parallel passage. Hold your place here and go to Matthew chapter 15. And we're going to flip back and forth on this. This woman came to Christ. Her daughter's possessed with the devil, and she needs God. Notice, and when she, in verse 22, and behold, a woman of Cana came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, have mercy on me, O Lord, thy son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. And he answered her not a word. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, send her away, for she crieth after us. She was getting on the disciples' nerves. They couldn't take it no more. She was crying. She was brokenhearted. She's upset. Her daughter is possessed with the devil. People, we need to keep that thought in mind. We don't need to quit just because circumstances aren't favorable. People, I'm not trying to make light of this in any way, but you listen to me. Circumstances are not favorable in America for anything to happen for God. People, if they can close churches as fast as they did, they can close churches anytime they want to. You know what's sad? Most people agreed with them. That's what's sad. We better be careful who we're listening to. Our children are at stake. This lady's daughter is at stake here. And she's not going to give up unless she gets something. Buddy, we're going to flip back and forth to the text. I'm going to bring a few more things out of that one. Notice something else about Hannah. Not only was her prayer more intense because opposition was there and she was under fire and things she was taking verbally. But notice in verse number 7, if you're going to pray and do something for God, you got to be faithful at it. That's what gets us in trouble. I'm going to tell you what happens in churches. You leave here on Sunday morning, you're all fired up to go home and pray. You pray Sunday and Monday and Tuesday, you get too busy and you forget it from then on. Not Hannah. Notice in verse 7. And as she did so year by year, she was faithful. First year, no baby came. The second year, no baby came. The third year, no baby came. Preacher, how do you know that? Because Penn and I had several children. So we know for her to have several children and still be torturing Hannah, it's been several years. A few years at least. And the more she tortured her, the harder she prayed. It got to where that was the consuming thought in her mind. Now, I want you to get the big picture, though. This is not a selfish woman praying. Preacher, what are you getting at? She's going to take him to the temple and give him to God. That's not selfish. These parents that have kids that swear it down, they're going to get them a baseball scholarship so they can go to school and they can get in major leagues and they can retire on what their children's making. That's selfish. That's selfish. I want my child to advance in this so he'll be a millionaire so I can sit home and do nothing. Let me know how that works out for you. Son, she prayed year after year. Elijah prayed 3.5 years that it wouldn't rain. He prayed 3 verses in the Old Testament, fire came from heaven, but he had to pray 7 times to see the rain come. Faithful. Faithful. We give up way too quick. We pray for a week about it and nothing happens, we quit and we go on. No. You pray till you hit heaven. Let me give you one real quick. I've experienced this in my own life. I'm not picking on you, I'm talking about me. I have made the statement before on my prayer list, praying for people. I see no need in praying for this person anymore. They will not listen, they will not come. And I walk out Sunday morning and they're sitting in the pew. God does that every once in a while just to let us know He's God. You know what I think? This is my opinion. You can say what you want to. You can definitely disagree with me. You'll be wrong, but it's okay. I don't mind if you're wrong. When you get to heaven, I think some way, shape, form, or fashion, we're going to be able to see all the prayers that God would have answered that we didn't pray. Man, that's a tough ordeal right there. You stop and you think of all the things God could have done in your behalf, but we didn't pray to see it done. The missionaries that could have gone to the field, that we could have prayed to the field, that never went. I think it's going to be a horrible thing that she prayed year by year. Notice the third thing. In verse number 7, you'll see prayer, if it's going to be effective, must move us. She wept and did not eat. Now, I want you to understand that. I'm going to add something else into there real quick. The Bible doesn't say it, but it goes hand in hand. If you're weeping and not eating, you know you're not sleeping. This became a consuming desire in her life. People, let me tell you something. I got to be real upset not to eat. You upset me so that I don't sleep? That ain't no big deal. Most of us in here, how many of y'all in here go to sleep like a baby all night long anyway? I know Drew and all them because they're babies, but anyway. Glad you're here.
Never sleep in your hair.
But isn't it true? Most of us, we try to go to sleep and you lay there and you toss and you turn, you toss and turn with nothing going on. As I heard one preacher make the statement, the fact that you get me upset and I can't sleep is no big deal. My checkbook does that. But if you can get me upset enough I'm not eating, we need to have a conversation. Buddy, she's so upset, she's fasting and praying and weeping and bawling and squalling to get a hold of God. It's the consuming desire in her life. She'd rather pray than eat. We need mothers that are more concerned with what their children are going to do for God in the future than what their children are going to be. Well, I want my son to be a lawyer. Why? He can't even pass kindergarten. He can't even break the graham crackers on the line. He fails taking a nap. And you're going to convince him to be an attorney. I want him to be a doctor. He can't even spell PhD. And you want him to be something he's not. I want my child to do one thing when they grow up, to serve God. I don't care where they work or what they do, as long as they serve God. Because God's going to take care of them. I know I'm not going to be here forever. You said your son's already grown. Yeah, they're grown. But you know what? One of these days, I'm not going to be here to guide them anymore. Mamas may not be here anymore to guide them anymore. They're going to have to know how to get a hold of God for themselves. And the only way they can learn that is if they learn it from us. She wept and she prayed and she cried. She was never going to quit till she heard from heaven. Go to Psalm 6. The 6th Psalm. We find David. In verse number 6, I'm weary with my groanings. All the night make I my bed to swim. I water my couch with my tears. Mine eyes consumed because of grief. It vexed old because of all mine enemies. Depart from me, all ye workers of iniquity, for the Lord hath heard the voice of my weeping. The Lord hath heard my supplication. The Lord will receive my prayer. Let all mine enemies be ashamed and sore vexed. Let them return and be ashamed suddenly. David understood that. Peninnah, there's one coming by the name of Samuel. Yeah, Hannah's going to have some more children. God's going to bless her with a couple more children. We don't know who they are. We know who Samuel is. You study history, you'll know who Samuel is. Samuel was a great man of God. Notice another thing. Prayer, if it's going to be effective, has to have an impact on us or consume us. Notice in verse 10, the Bible says, and she was in bitterness of soul. The word bitterness there is sadness, emotionally speaking. The word is used to describe heart-crushing experience. Hannah and I had no hope of a child outside of God. People, we have no hope in America outside of God. The White House can't save us. Definitely the House of Representatives can't save us. The Senate, the Supreme Court, our governor and all its leaders, they're not down there for God. They claim they're down there for people, but every time I see them, they're serving themselves. How can you be broke and go to Washington, D.C. and be a millionaire in 24 months if it's not crooked? Just Thought I'd ask. I just thought I'd ask. I love it when people have never started a business and government going to tell business owners how to run their business, and they have no idea how to start a business themselves because they've all failed at everything they've done. It's a fact. People, we need some people that are going to get a hold of God. She's bitterness of soul. Her heart is crushed. Peninnah keeps torturing her. And no doubt Peninnah is outside playing with her children from time to time, and she can hear it, and it just breaks her heart. The devil's out there cavorting with all of his crowd. We got Gay Pride Day. We got abortion everywhere in the world. We've got liquor on every billboard you can find, on every TV program you watch. The devil is having himself a time. Hannah could hear it. Or Hannah could hear it, but she kept weeping over it. We hear what the devil's doing, but don't give up. Don't give up. Notice something else. The Bible said she wept sore. Her burden consumed her. It moved her to the point that she had to get some relief in God. And people, we need that in our homes and in our churches. It's a shame we come to churches and the altars are dry and hell is filling with your children and grandchildren, nieces and nephews. Preacher, that's a horrible thing to say. It's a horrible reality, people. Dry altars lead to damnation of people. When's the last time we really got so brokenhearted over our people out in sin that we literally wept and cried about it? It broke our heart and moved us to the point we didn't even want to eat till we heard from heaven. Notice in verse 11, prayer will cause you to do things you normally wouldn't do. Notice what she does in verse 11. She vowed a vow. She made a vow she normally wouldn't have made. Her vow is very simple. God, you give me this child, I'm going to give him right back to you. Now, Ecclesiastes reminds us in chapter 4, verse 4 and 5, it's better not to vow a vow than to vow and not pay. So Hannah knew that. And Hannah's offering as sincere as she can, I will take him to the Lord. See, she's sort of like, if you will, flip back to Matthew 15. She's sort of like the lady that came to Christ with a demon-possessed daughter. Notice in verse 24, Jesus responds, but he answered and said, I'm not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Then she came and worshipped him. She came, fell at his feet, and she worshipped him, saying, Lord, help me. But he answered and said, it is not meet to take the children's bread and cast it to the dogs. She's a Gentile. She's from Canaan. She's not of the house of Israel. She had no right to Christ or the blessings of Christ, being outside strangers to the grace of God. Don't you understand? The bread belongs to the children, not to the outsiders. You think I stopped that woman? Look at verse 27. She said, truth, Lord. Lord, you're speaking the truth. I know you're right. Yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table. Don't those dogs sit around on the bottom, on the floor underneath that table, and wait for those children, even the master himself, to knock food off from time to time? And they're there to clean it up. She was not going to leave till she got a hold of God. She even had a debate with God for a few moments. And notice what Christ said in verse 29. Verse 28. Then Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, what? Great is thy faith. Be it even unto thee, even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. Let me give you a short illustration. In verse number 28. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. You know what God did her? Charles Spurgeon says God signed her a check and said, lady, you write it out and fill it and I'll cash it. What do you need? I'm giving you a blank check with my signature on it. You fill it in and I will grant it. You know what? God's used to giving people blank checks he can trust. He has no problem with it. He reaches there and he writes it out and said, even as you ask. You think of missionaries going around the world and what it costs them just to travel. And God has to bring the money in one check at a time. One donor at a time to give them the amount of money to fly. Especially if you have a family. I mean, it's nothing for a trip over to cost you $1,000, $1,500. And if you have a couple of children and your wife, you have to take her along with you. By that time, you done spent about $8,000. And you got to find somebody to take you to the airport and drop you off, and somebody to pick you up on the other end. And I mean, people, it's a hassle. And it takes somebody that knows that God's going to be with them every step of the way. And that's what we find. This lady gets a hold of God and she's not going to let go unless he cures her daughter. Hannah grabs hold of God and not going to let God go unless he gives her a son. Verse 18, you see the last thing. She prayed till she got her assurance. And she said, let thine handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad. Why? Because notice what Eli said in verse 17. And the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. You've asked, I've answered. Go on home and get ready. Start building the crib. Getting the sheets and the blankets that you need. Start stocking up on diapers. Because the baby's coming. Man, what could God do with mothers that prayed like that? Mothers that can get a hold of God. Mothers that just wouldn't be denied. It's sad, but I've seen this in this church among our own people. Parents that would dedicate their children to God and you never see them again. What a waste. What a waste. She takes Samuel to the temple and she drops him off. She goes and she checks on him every year. Samuel becomes the great giant in Israel. Because he had a praying mama. There's one thing I encourage you to do. Look at the situation that we're in as a people and a nation. And get a hold of God. If you would stand.